Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 15 of season 1 of Arrow called Dodger. Before we continue on, as you can see, I'm trying out a new microphone, so if there's any problems with the audio quality on this episode, let me know. So let's just get right into it. There's quite a bit going on in this episode. Overall, I think this is a fairly solid episode, but maybe not one of the stronger ones this season, but still pretty darn entertaining. Okay, now this episode is named in honor of our main villain this time. Dodger is a character from the comics. I'm not really that familiar with him. I just when this episode was announced, I had to look him up on the DC Comics wiki. He was created by Judd Winnick, who has been nodded. His name has been nodded to in this series before, and basically his shtick was he was a thief who had teleportation powers. So bringing that, they keep, and he was an English character as well. So here again, there are no superpowers, at least at this point in the Arrow universe. So I think them taking up the shtick of using the bomb collars is a pretty reasonable compromise. And do keep in mind, I believe it was what 6-7 years ago, someplace in America, where somebody did virtually the same thing to rob a bank. I remember hearing about that. Actually, I was living in Japan at the time, and one of my Japanese co-workers told me about it with this "Holy crap, America is completely insane" look on his face. So, that really did stick in my mind. Now, Dodger is played, of course, by James Callis, best known as Dr. Gaius Baltar on Battlestar Galactica, a show of which I am an enormous fan. And, of course, Callis was really one of the stars of that. And I don't just mean in terms of him being one of the main characters. I mean, the character he played of Gaius Baltar was this wonderfully rich, very conflicted, very ambiguous, but eternally interesting character. And Callis just absolutely rocked Baltar. I just can really not say enough good things about his performance. And considering some of the other very good actors that he was working with on the show, like Mary McDonald and, oh my God, Edward James Olmos, Callis really stood tall, and I have a great respect for him as an actor. Sadly, he doesn't really have a lot to work with as the Dodger. I mean, the Dodger is just basically a very ruthless thief, and that's about all it. That's all he has. Now, Callis, of course, being a talented fella, he certainly brings quite a bit of gravitas to what he does. The Dodger has a genuine sense of danger and menace about him, but also, a little bit of an odd charm to him as well. Now, honestly, though, like I said, there's just really not a lot to Dodger as a character for us to really talk about. On the other hand, he does make it out of this episode alive, so it certainly is possible we'll see him return again as a potential member of Green Arrow's Rogues Gallery. I think a jewel thief with a fondness for bombs, would certainly make a pretty interesting rival for Ollie to deal with. So let's hope we get to see Callis come back again sometime. Now let me see here. Speaking of guest stars that folks might recognize, we have a fellow by the name of Chin Han playing Frank Chen. And if he looks familiar to you, well, he's the accountant guy that Batman kidnaps from Hong Kong in The Dark Knight from a few years ago. Not a whole lot to really say about Frank Chen as a character. We really don't understand a lot of what's going on with this guy, just that he's someone with ties to the undertaking in some fashion who, like Moira, apparently is not too thrilled about what's going on and kind of wants to get out of it, or he somehow did manage to get out of it. I don't think it was made 100% clear. But whatever the case, it is with his help that Moira is able to contact China White and is apparently attempting to hire her to kill Malcolm. Wow. I mean, we knew that Moira was going to be doing something like this, but And I fully did expect her in some way to try and kill Malcolm because, well, he does seem to be the author of most of her woes. Her hiring China White to do it, though, I did not see that coming. That promises to be quite interesting. And now, as I've said, this show has been criminally underutilizing Kelly Hu. So as we move in a little bit closer towards the season finale, I have a feeling we're going to be seeing more of her. And first of all, props to the folks at the costuming department at Arrow for ditching that god-awful wig that they slapped poor Miss Hu with at the beginning, and apparently dyeing it is, well, maybe not the greatest dye job in the world, but certainly a marked improvement over what we were dealing with in the early episodes of this series. China White looks much, much better, and dudes, I am totally down for these guys just turning Kelly Hu loose to just raise all kinds of hell. We know that this is a lady who can act. As I've said, she's done the voice of badass DC Universe assassin Cheshire on Young Justice. We'll be talking a little bit more about Young Justice in just a few minutes. So, yeah, she's got everything that we could possibly want to make China White a very, very memorable character. But just really has not been given the opportunity to do so. But I think that's probably going to be changing, possibly even next episode. I've read the previews, and yeah, next episode is gonna be really crazy. Okay, so let's move on back and talk briefly about our main little trio of Felicity, Dig, and Oliver. Now, Felicity, this is our first chance to really see her as a full-fledged member of the team, and I like that she is, not sitting there being good soldier. I mean, that was never what Dig was supposed to be, and I certainly think it would be a disservice to her character if that was what Felicity did. She gets in Oliver's face and really questions his decisions, calls out his morally questionable actions, exactly as Dig does, and this is exactly as it should be. It creates conflict among our characters, and honestly, Oliver still does need these, I don't know if reality checks are maybe the exact right term, but he does sort of need a differing perspective. And honestly, I kind of have some mixed feelings about the point that Felicity is making here. Just the fact that this guy has a kid who's in elementary school does not excuse the fact that he's gone out and done some pretty bad stuff. I mean, he's stolen a whole bunch of money from people. He has ruined some people's lives completely. Now, Oliver is quite clear that he's not going to go and kill the guy. He's just going to go and give him a good scare and convince him to return the money. So, I really don't see why having a kid should excuse this guy from, getting a little frightened by a vigilante. I mean, Oliver doesn't have to break into the guy's house to scare him. He could scare the guy in the parking lot of his job, and the guy's kid is never even in the picture in the slightest. So, yeah, I think Felicity is maybe pushing things just a little, but she does have a reasonable point. I mean, but okay. I think I'm in danger of just endlessly repeating myself here, so let's keep in mind. Having a kid does not mean that you are not a bad person. I mean, yeah, that should not really be the sort of thing that should get you a free pass on things. But Oliver does need to be reminded that his actions do have consequences, and if he goes off and kills this guy, well, then he'd be leaving an innocent 10-year-old kid without a father, which I suppose may be kind of what Felicity was really trying to get at. But, well, this is Felicity, so she didn't quite state her point as clearly as she possibly could. Alright, well, that does seem a reasonable thing, so I think we'll leave that point there. Now, speaking of Ollie and what's going on with him this episode, what's going on with Ollie this time around is mostly focused on his relationship with McKenna Hall. him going on the date with her and them seeming to start a genuine relationship. I, I still don't really think I've seen enough of McKenna to have to really have a very solid opinion of her. So far, she seems to be a reasonably decent character. She seems to be good at her job. She has a sense of humor. So she does certainly have an interesting personality. Like I said, I just don't think I've really gotten to know her well enough to have developed a very solid grip on her as a character. I mean, she is a new supporting character, so that is not unreasonable. But she has good chemistry with Oliver. She's an old friend of his, so we can see how they would be drawn to each other very quickly. And it is interesting to see that this is not entirely treated as 100% easy. You know, McKenna kind of really goofs with Oliver when she tries to press him too much on what happened about that island, and Oliver really has to kind of shut her down with, "I don't want to talk about this stuff." Now, of course, it's pretty natural to wonder exactly what kind of hard choices Oliver would have had to make from McKenna's point of view when, as far as she knows, he was stuck on an island all by himself. I mean, you know, do I eat this really gross-looking bug in order to starve to death is probably the kind of hard choices she's thinking that he had to make, which, of course, is pretty darn far from the truth. But again, this is only as much as she knows. Now, it is, of course, a very classic little plot twist that at the end, McKenna is promoted, well, quote-unquote promoted, to working on the vigilante squad with Detective Lance, even though Lance seems to be the only person in the entire police department who really seems to be all that concerned with catching the vigilante. But the idea of, you know, your romantic partner trying to track down your alter ego is classic stuff from superhero comics. I don't really think any more needs to be said about that. So let's talk about Dig and Carly, since we're on the romance route. I think this was handled reasonably well, although I think Carly might have just been, at the first part of it, a little too hard on Dig. Now, I understand that she's probably a little bit more honest with herself about her feelings for him. I mean, we even had Ted Gaynor kind of ribbing Dig about how Carly was obviously into him. But I really kind of think she needs to cut the poor guy some slack. I mean, it is understandable how Dig would have some mixed feelings about this situation, or at least feel a little uncomfortable sometimes. I mean, he's basically dating his dead brother's wife, or at least is out on a date with her. That's got to be a little weird. But Carly, she just doesn't even want to seem to give Dig a little awkwardness, a little. Well, okay, I think you understand what I'm getting at here. Is you know, yeah, what you guys are doing, it would be very strange if there wasn't some awkwardness going into this relationship. So, you know, kind of, I think Dig should have been cut a little slack here. But to his credit, by the end of it, Dig's really kind of bounced back. They seem to have found their comfort zone with each other. And I'm honestly intrigued as to where this is going to go. Also, it's just nice to see something good happen for people in their personal lives on this show. I mean, so much bad stuff, you know, people getting hurt, people dying. It's nice to see positive things come about for the characters. Beyond, you know, Oliver taking down the bad guy of the week. Here we have Dig forming a new emotional tie that could very much enrich his life. And, you know, Dig's a guy who's had a pretty tough life. I mean, let's not forget, Dig's brother and Carly's husband was murdered by Deadshot. Gee, I sure hope that we never ever see Deadshot again, because, you know, that certainly wouldn't cause drama and conflict in any way, shape, or form. Yes, sir, I'm sure glad that Deadshot is 100% absolutely positively no way he's ever coming back dead. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a superhero story. Come on. Come on. You really think they're going to leave him dead? Okay, I've enough being cute. So let's move on and talk some more about our main plot here. Oh yeah, well, we do need to talk about Felicity. Almost forgot. Apart from her, kind of getting on Oliver's case about what's going on, not a really whole lot to say except, wow, when she dresses up, Felicity is. I do sort of like that the Oliver and Dig even sort of shared a little bit of a look with each other when she first walked in there. And I like they didn't say anything, but you can tell they're both quite impressed. Now, getting back to Felicity. First of all, this is one criticism I do have to level at the show, is the scene where the Dodger slaps that collar on her. We don't see this. We have no idea how he is able to pull this off, seemingly in the middle of a room full of hundreds of people. I mean, all Felicity really had to do is yell, "Hey, someone stop that guy," and the Dodger was screwed right then and there. And just the fact that she chooses to just walk over to him and say, you shouldn't steal that, like he double dipped a chip or something, or you know, like wiped his hands on the gotten nacho cheese on his hands and wiped it on the tablecloth or something. It's just, it's really just laughable that she would do that. It is pretty dumb, and it's just only for us to set up the Felicity with the bomb collar thing. And as long as I'm talking about that scene, look, I know this is set up so that the Dodger can steal the thing himself. First of all, you have to wonder, if the Dodger doesn't like to get his hands dirty, why did he go and steal the jewel for himself? Why didn't he just slap a collar on one of the waiters or something and make that guy do it? But no, the Dodger just strolls on up, opens the case, and takes it out and stuffs it in his pocket as he's walking away. Again, I know this is set up so that he can steal this jewel and Oliver can catch him, but shouldn't he have been tipped off that something funny was going on by this? This security that wouldn't even. Let me put it this way. I was at Starbucks today, and and you ever notice how they keep the bottles of juice behind those little locked things? And if you want one of them, you have to ask the barista for it. Okay, it was easier for the Dodger to steal a freaking rare Spanish jewel than it would be for me to get my hands on one of those bottles of juice from Starbucks. This is laughable. Oh, God. I love this show, but man, sometimes, man. Okay, hey, speaking of stuff that doesn't really make sense, Oliver at one point asks Felicity, can you activate the bug in McKenna's phone again? Why was the bug ever deactivated? And speaking of stuff that doesn't really quite make sense, okay, when Oliver first tangles with the Dodger, now he's trying to be a little bit more heroic here and gives the Dodger a chance to surrender. Okay, that's pretty much classic stuff out of the Good Guy playbook. On the other hand, he does know that the Dodger is a murderer. Dig even flat out says the Dodger has murdered a guy with the exploding collar in Spain. Oliver, if a guy is known to walk around with explosives on him, maybe playing nice with him isn't the greatest idea. If Oliver just shot the dude in the leg from behind, that would have been it for the Dodger. There were cops nearby. It's not like he wouldn't have gotten medical treatment within just minutes. So yeah, Ollie completely blew the chance to easily take this guy down with virtually no hassle at all. But this is Oliver trying to grow and be a more quote unquote chivalrous hero, I suppose. So I guess we have to let that go. Oh yeah, we also got another nod to the various creators of Green Arrow over the years when they mentioned the streets Adams and O'Neill. Uh, and they also mentioned a place called Harris Park. I'm not sure who that might be in relation to Green Arrow. Harris is, of course, not exactly an uncommon name. The only person that really comes to my mind immediately is Tony Harris, a very talented fellow who worked for years on one of my all-time favorite superhero books with a very talented English writer by the name of James Robinson on a wonderful series called Starman. It was really one of the best things that DC put out during the 90s. But to the best of my knowledge, Tony Harris has not done much or of anything with Green Arrow, if at all. So, yeah, nothing really to say about that. Oh yeah, almost forgot. When Oliver does take the Dodger down, I'll Dodger says, you and I are the same. Well, okay, the Dodger is obviously really trying a last ditch BS attempt here because Green Arrow kills guys, but he doesn't really kill innocent people. He kills mooks and all this other stuff sometimes. Dodger just kind of slaps a collar on whoever's convenient. So that doesn't really hold water. And also, the Dodger keeps the money for himself, while Green Arrow doesn't. So the Dodger's really just flat out talking out of his ass right there. But, he's pretty desperate at the moment, so I can forgive that. And I really think that whole line about how I'm not Robin Hood was pretty unnecessary. I mean, for God's sakes, the jewel that the Dodger steals at the beginning, it's even called the Sherwood Ruby. I mean, come on. A little more subtlety, guys. Alright, so our other big thing is we have Colton Hayes, I believe is this gentleman's name. He is introduced as Roy Harper. Roy Harper is, of course, Green Arrow's longtime sidekick from the comics. Started out as Speedy, became the character of Arsenal, and is these days calling himself Red Arrow. Speedy, Roy Harper character, lot of history with Roy. Way too much for me to really get into. One thing that I actually saw a fan talking about on Twitter is that this version of Roy seems to share the same haircut as his counterpart Red Arrow on the Young Justice cartoon. Okay, I agree with that. I looked at the pictures and it does seem to be true. Hayes comes in best known for the MTV Teen Wolf show, apparently. I got no opinion about that. I've never seen that series, although the movie Teen Wolf from the 80s with Michael J. Fox is actually extremely fun and very entertaining and well worth your time. Now, as for his performance as Roy Harper, well, this is where we're just introduced to him, kind of only given the most basic gist of what's going on with him. But I gotta say, this Mr. Hayes does deliver. Roy seems like an interesting person. He definitely seems like somebody who's been through the tough side of life, even if, as he does say, what he said at the police station was a sob story. Now, though it wouldn't surprise me to find out that his father really was dead, the interesting thing about Roy's dad in the comics is, if I remember correctly, he was like a forest ranger or a park ranger who died in a wildfire. There's no real significance to that. I just thought that was a particularly interesting occupation and way for a parent to get killed off in comics. Honestly, boy, I don't really know anything about Roy's mom. I don't think I've ever read a story that really mentioned her. Although, I do remember that Roy in the comics was taken in by a friend of his father's who was a member of, I believe, the Navajo tribe. So Roy kind of grew up learning a lot about Native American traditions and all of that stuff. Well, I don't think that's going to be an aspect of this particular character. Now, about his interaction with Thea. Well, okay, her nickname is Speedy. Roy is probably destined to become Speedy. Okay, I mean, this is cute. This is certainly giving Thea, giving her own little area to deal with. She's got her mentorship thing slowly forming with Laurel. Now she's found this guy who basically has love interest written all over him. And of course, we get to see her tracking him down, showing some real brains on Thea's part. Now, the idea that you can just call up a store, say, if I give you a description of a customer, can you tell me what their name is? And actually having a store do that, yeah, look, I worked retail for a year, and if I'd have done something like that, I'd have lost my job. And it's also kind of ridiculous that Roy could get arrested and apparently still have the property he was arrested for stealing sitting around his house. I mean, you'd think the cops would, go over there and search for it. But, yeah, okay, whatever. Plot versus realism. Realism takes a loss here yet again. And let me see here. Yeah, that's about really all that I have to say this time around. Again, a reasonably entertaining episode. Several important plot threads are moved forward, but oh yeah, jeez, almost forgot to talk about what happened on the island. Okay, so we get to see Oliver bonding with Slade a little bit more, and I gotta really give Manu Bennett some credit. He does genuinely very, even without having to say a word about it, you can tell that Slade is honestly scared. And Manu Bennett really does a very nice job of selling that. Slade never says a word, but you can really tell this guy really does think he's probably going to die. And given what happened at the airfield, the fact that his life now is in Oliver's hands, yeah, Slade's got pretty good reason to be worried. Now, Oliver's interaction with the other survivor, whether or not this guy is who he says he is, well, okay, this is here meant to show us some of the hard choices that Oliver has had to make on this island, in relation, of course, to what he says to McKenna. Honestly, I just can't really find an emotional reaction within myself to this. I understand why Oliver did what he did, but yeah, again, I just really have no real reaction to this. I think we need to find out the truth of this guy one way or the other for me to have any real feelings about what we see there. I mean, the guy's story, it makes a lot of sense as to why Oliver is really suspicious of what's going on here. So, apart from that, I really have nothing more to say about that aspect of this episode. So let me see here. Oh yeah, I did like that things are still delightfully awkward between Oliver and Quentin. But yeah, folks, I think that's everything that I have to say for this episode. So, as always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.